Welcome to Underwire Podcast. If you're new, I'm Dominique. If you're returning, thank you for your support. Please help us grow by hitting that subscribe button on YouTube. All you need is a Google account to subscribe. Today we are joined by Alivia Tagliaferri, but I call her Leah, and we'll talk about that. There's a story there.
Yes.
Please check out her first interview where we discussed her career as an author and filmmaker. And presently, she is a district manager for a state representative. We also talked veterans and homelessness and pursuing your dreams. And it was a super cool, you just have had an exciting life. So it was a really cool interview. So please check that out. You're always fun and engaging. You're back to discuss, this time being a female entrepreneur and business owner. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about your family legacy and all things yummy and Italian food, especially her dad's famous sauce. I mean, if you are from our area, your dad's sauce is famous for sure. So now with your brother, Aldo, do I say that
Aldo,
correctly?
yep.
Aldo, okay. They now own Tag's Family Style Takeout. So welcome, Leah.
Thank you, Dominique.
Let's start with this story. Why?
Okay.
When you were introduced to me like 15 years ago or whatever, you were introduced as Leah. Mm-hmm. And then I saw your name later as Alivia, and I'm like, who's Alivia?
There's always been confusion with that. Okay. At one point, I don't know if I was like 8 or 9 years old, the librarian called my house one time and asked for Alivia. And I said, yes, this is her. You have some overdue books. Can you please bring them down? I said, sure. And they said, oh, by the way, can you ask your sister Leah to bring her other 5? And I said, oh, yeah, I'll get those. So I was named after my grandmother. My grandmother, who is known as Leah Tagliaferri, Leah and Aldo had, the original Tag's restaurant on Memorial Avenue. Leah is not her real name, was not her real name. It was her nickname.
Are you serious?
Mm-mm. So Alivia was her real name. My grandmother was the firstborn of the Taddios in America. So my Aunt Teresa, she was born over in Italy. My great-grandmother was pregnant with my grandmother on the way over. Oh, so she was the firstborn Italian. She did not speak English very well, and she flunked first grade. I can't remember if it was once or twice. However, this is interesting. It was her first grade teacher that nicknamed her Leah.
Oh, my God.
And they spelled it the Jewish way, Leah, instead of Lia, which would have been the Italian way. And really, her name was Alivia. So
that makes more sense when you say it like that.
She was named after her grandfather, Alivio, and her brother, Leo Taddeo, his real name was Alivio. So what we learned, though, is that when my parents were deciding, now there was no decision that I was being named Alivia. It was the decision as to whether to spell it with an A or an I. I was actually how my great-grandparents had spelled it. But they didn't know that at the time because, records weren't great. So anyways, I'm Alivia with an A. My grandmother was Alivia with an I, and her real name was Alivia Elizabeth Tagliaferri. Well, Taddeo Tagliaferri. My senior year of college, my grandmother passed. And it was March. It was right before I was going on a trip to England with the rugby team. And I'll never forget this.
Can I interrupt you?
Yes.
Of course you played rugby.
I did.
Go on.
But I also played the cello. So
okay.
I went to school. I went to Penn State to play the cello.
You have to be like one of the most fascinating people. Seriously. Okay, go on. I just think that's funny.
I had a scholarship to play the cello. That was really funny because I had to declare music as my major, but I did not like the program at the time. So hence the reason I was there for 5 years instead of 4, because that first year just kind of was a wash. But anyways, we were getting ready to leave for England, and 2 weeks before that, my grandmother had gone. She had heart failure and was literally they thought was not going to make it. By the time I got home from school, and I got there, she was almost flatlined, and everybody was kind of saying their last things. And my dad kept waiting for me to get there, and finally I walk in the hospital doors, and he said, "I think she's waiting to see you. I think she's waiting," And I went and I held her hand and I said, Mom, I'm here. You can go now if you want. I love you so much. You were the best grandmother in the world. I'll always love you. And I said, I hope I've made you proud. And now you're going to be in heaven and you're going to see parts of me that maybe I didn't want you to see, but I hope I still make you proud and I hope you'll still love me. And I said this to her, whispered, as I was holding her hand. Don't you know? I swear to God, it was like a movie scene. Beep, 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 beep. Like her heart rate starts going up and everything. Now, my grandmother was deaf as a doorknob for 10 years. I mean, if you heard my grandmother and grandfather, oh my God, it was like
Did you have to scream at them?
Everything was screaming because they couldn't hear. My grandfather would get so upset. It was like, it's just, my God.
We're Italian, we scream anyway.
Well, anyways, but like take it up a couple notches, right?
Lord.
So anyways, she was so deaf. So I don't think she's hearing me. Dominique, not only did she pull out of it, but she hears now. So for 2 weeks where she came out of this experience, and this is the most wonderful thing in the world. The next day I went to go visit her, and she is spry and alert and everything.
Eating a meatball?
No. But that night, my grandmother asked me to write a love letter for her. And he had me write everything out to her, whatever. And so I go to give her.
Oh, so your grandfather asked you to write a love letter to her?
Yes, he dictated it, and I wrote it. So I go to give her letter and check in on her.
How old was she?
She was 70, 3 or 4, maybe 5. She had a lot of heart issues.
See, I think that the older I get, the younger that looks to me.
That does look young. She was very young. But like I said, she had 20 years of heart attacks, heart issues, heart problems. We have genetically high cholesterol that runs in our family. And back then, they were just learning how to medically address that. But, she was still taking aspirins, you know what I mean, to keep that, managed. And it just wasn't as effective as the medicines are now. But anyways, and then I gave her the letter from my grandfather, and she read it, and she folded. May I use your paper for a second? Yeah. She reads it like this. And then all of a sudden she folds it and she pats it and she puts it in, those little things that open up drawers where they put your food and there's a drawer in there.
Yeah, like the food tray?
Yes, yeah. She opens up her food tray drawer and puts the letter in there. She goes, honey girl, after 50 years, I finally got him right where I want him.
That's the best line I've ever heard.
She didn't cry. She was like, it was matter of fact. She said, I finally got him right where I want him.
That is the best line I've ever. So hang in there.
I don't know, 50 years
to say I love you.
So that's where Leah and Alivia comes from.
Well, that was a perfect segue to flow into talking about your Italian culture and your dad and how he got started in this town with the restaurant. How did that... But side note, why are Italians so obsessed with naming their children after themselves? Because it happened in my family too.
Well, it's a respect. It's like an honor thing. You know what I mean? Especially for the grandparents. You know what I mean? Because my brother was named after Aldo, my grandfather, and then my sister.
My brother.
My sister was named after my aunt. Yeah. So it's just a repetition of the family name.
Damn narcissistic Italians.
It's like their way of honor.
I know. I'm just joking.
Yeah.
I'm just joking.
I know you are.
But anyway, so tell us about your dad.
Well, I will tell you that today is his passiversary.
Oh, so are you serious?
Today is the day that he passed away.
I have goosebumps.
18 years ago. Yeah.
This was meant to be.
It was.
Isn't it weird that I suggested this day to talk about him?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So 18 years ago, 2005. I cannot believe it's been that long. So my grandfather, so after World War II, he and my grandmother met while he came home on leave for a wedding. And they had gone to high school together, but they weren't in the same grade. They knew of each other, but they came home. They both were at a wedding. My grandmother saw him, basically knew that was the man she wanted to marry. And they were corresponding while he was over in England. And then he came home and they got married and had my aunt, Marianne, and my dad. For 10 years, they had a grocery store business that my grandfather took over from my great-grandfather and my uncle. They had a Italian store. It wasn't. It was actually a convenience store. It was like a grocery store on Sherman Avenue over in East 3rd Street. Really close to where Rainbow Carpet is.
Okay.
And God, East End Grocery is.
Wow, you're going way back.
Yeah, way, way back. So anyways, but they sold that business. And then for a few years, I don't know what my grandfather did or if he was just kind of in transition. But the property on Memorial Ave across the street from the pajama factory came, available. And he thought that would be a good, business to have, providing, at that time it was Tag's Bar and Grill. They sold sandwiches, the garbage sandwich and beer. It was more of a bar and grill. It wasn't a restaurant back then. And it was really to serve the blue collar community, the workers over the pajama factory, like Humming Engines, Bethlehem Steel. So they were in that area to do that. And one day my grandmother was making meatballs. And then so she sold meatball subs and everybody went wild for it. And then it was spaghetti and meatballs and everybody went wild for it. And then it just started growing and growing from there and adding. And transformed into the restaurant.
Oh,
And so they did that for 46 years.
oh my gosh.
mhm.
I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah. In the late 70s or early 80s, I would have been like 4 or 5 years old. My dad graduated with an English degree. He was a teacher and he wanted to be a coach. The pay was really bad back then. So he ended up owning a car dealership. He sold Jeep Cherokee Eagles and he loved that business. We were coming home from a trip down to Ocean City, Maryland, and we heard over the news as we were coming up over, South Williamsport, cresting up over the mountain, that there was a fire, and it was my dad's business was on fire. And I don't know if he didn't have insurance or if it was just at the same time my grandmother's health started taking a turn for the worse, but my grandfather needed help at the business, at Tags. And so my dad helped him, and it was just supposed to be a temporary thing, and that didn't turn out to be temporary. So,
Wow.
he went back in the family business and stayed. And in 2005, when we found out my dad was dying of pancreatic cancer, my mom and grandfather made the decision that they wanted to close the business and not do it without him. And so they ended up, closing, and that was that.
How long of a battle with pancreatic cancer did your dad have, like between finding out that he had it and when he passed?
It was 33 days.
Because pancreatic cancer, typically, again, I love to educate as well as entertain. It's typically a fast-growing cancer, isn't it?
Very fast-growing, and usually the symptoms don't occur until it's already metastasized. And so for him, it was already in his liver. Technically, he died of liver failure. It was a complication of the pancreatic cancer.
Well, let me interject for a minute, because that's what we do. I'm Italian. I should not have a podcast. I'm like, stop over talking people.
We're good.
But yeah, especially when you know each other. But my brother was very fond of your dad, was there all the time. And I remember him saying that he started to have lower back pain.
Yes. Yep. That's a huge symptom. Now, this is something that my mom and I deeply regret, is that he was constantly, well, I wasn't home, but my mom lived with guilt for years, that he was constantly complaining of his back and his back pain. And I came home for Mother's Day that year. It was 2005. I had moved out to Colorado, and I came home for Mother's Day that year. And my dad had been complaining about not feeling that great. He had a cold he couldn't get rid of. And when I came home, we had a picnic out at Indian Park. It was a favorite thing for us to do. And he didn't look good. And he had lost weight, and he was complaining about his back. I said, God, Dad. Now, my dad played football, and he was a bartender, and he was constantly going up and downstairs carrying kegs and heavy things or whatever. And I said, you have probably thrown your back out, and, you're taking all these, Tylenols and stuff for your back. I said, you probably ate a hole in your stomach. Just go to the doctor, for God's sakes. Yeah. And I knew something was wrong the next day when I made him oatmeal, and he couldn't even eat oatmeal. And that's when I was like, put my fist down. I was like, you're going to the hospital. I'm taking you. If you don't go yourself, I'm taking you. So he was at the hospital, and he just so happened to run into Dr. Calder, Eric Calder, or Joe Calder, who was his heart doctor, his cardiologist. He said, Tag, you don't look good. Your color looks off. I want to see these results when you get them back. Well, nothing came back that was out of the ordinary. Whatever test they ran, nothing showed up that was off. And so my dad called Dr. Calder and said, Joe, there's nothing going on. I think I just have this cold. He said, no, Tag, I want to run a CAT scan on you. He said, well, we just did a CAT scan 8 months ago. This is how aggressive it was. His CAT scan 8 months before was completely clean. So I get a call at the house. Well, Dr. Calder calls our house that night.
Can I interject again to point out believe me, small towns lack a lot. However, what they don't lack is longtime friendships, strong family ties. Mm-hmm. And can you imagine if he would have lived somewhere else? No. He wouldn't have had that connection with somebody that really cared. He's
and
calling
knew
the
him.
house.
Yes. Not only that. So he called the house and he said, what time does your dad get home from work tonight? And my heart dropped.
Oh, no.
I said, he's usually home by 11. He said, I'll be up. And I called my dad.
Oh, my God.
And I said, Dr. Calder is coming up to the house tonight. And he said, I'm dying. He knew.
He did.
He knew as soon as I said that. It
was just instinct.
And so anyways, he gets home. My mom and I were downstairs, and Dr. Calder came. And Joe and my dad were really good friends. I mean, very, very, very good friends. And And he said, Tag, I don't want you to go into this next appointment not knowing what I need to tell you. He said, you need to know this. He said, you've got pancreatic cancer. It's in your liver. And my dad said, how long do I have? And he said, anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. He said, but that's just a guesstimate. And he said, I recommend you go down to Johns Hopkins and see if they can do something to extend it as long as possible. So anyways, my dad was very stoic, did not break down at all at first, was just very matter of fact. My mom was very stoic. I was in so much shock. I don't think I cried at first. I think I was just in shock. Doc called her left. My dad called my aunt, who lived she lives in North Carolina in Pinehurst. And he said, Marianne, he said, when Papa or Grandpa Taddeo died, how old were you? And she said, 4. Why? He said, do you remember him? Apparently she said no. And that's when he broke down and started crying. He said, I was 2 when he died and I don't remember him either. And my niece and nephew at the time were 4 and 2 years old. He said, and that's when he turned to my mom and me. He goes, they're not going to remember me. And, yeah.
Oh, I put the tissues over there because I didn't think we would need them.
I'm okay. But thank you. Yeah.
Wow. And then that was not even 6, it was 33 days.
33 days. He did go to Johns Hopkins. There was a mistake that was made. He went out on a Friday. There was a mistake that was made with the weekend crew down there. They gave him the wrong medicine. They gave him some sort of a muscle relaxant, so they couldn't even do the surgery that was scheduled on Monday. And he was in such pain for whatever reason. The crew, the doctor, and the nursing staff that was there that weekend also didn't want to give him the pain management that had been prescribed because they thought it would make him, quote unquote, addicted. Well, this is a dying man that's in pain from cancer, right? And so he was in agony that weekend he was there. Finally, Dr. Calder, because we were getting the calls, Dr. Calder called somebody that down in Johns Hopkins that finally got in touch with his doctor down there and said, what are you doing? Give this man whatever he needs to make him comfortable. So in those 3 hours from when we got the word what was going on to getting down there, he was more comfortable. But he just said, I want to come home. I want to die in my own home. I don't want any extension. He said, we're just going to do this. And that's what he did.
I don't blame him.
Yeah.
Oh, were you all around him?
We were. It was, when I say a beautiful death, and I know that some people would find that morbid, you can't get have a more beautiful death than my father's. He was surrounded not only by his family, but the 2 weeks leading up to his death, his best friends were coming over. He was on the phone with Frank Barone every single day. They were like girls. They were always on the phone anyways. They were such good buddies. They were best friends since they were 9 years old.
I know. There's such strong ties in this town with all the Italians.
Oh,
such
my
strong
God.
ties.
And that was the time frame where Frank's he was having some issues with his liver and had a liver transfer. So and it was earlier in the year that happened, and they thought my dad had a cold, so he couldn't go see him. So my dad is standing outside of Frankie's house, and they had a house where there was a section of it that was like glass windows or whatever. My dad's standing up, and Frankie's on the other side, and they're like waving to each other and kissing and like blowing kisses. I mean, they were just like brothers. But anyway, so Frankie came up, and then one of the dearest stories that I remember is when Joe DeMassimo came up. And these are guys, and Jojo Letta, they were all coming up, and they were all on his wedding.
I know all these guys, yeah.
So, or Johnny D, not Joey D. Johnny DeMassimo came up, and I was walking out the door. My dad was sitting out on the porch. He was still well enough to sit up, and I had to go get him his medicine and do something for him. I said, "Is there anything else, Daddy?" He said, "No," and Johnny was kind of staying away. He goes, Johnny, what are you doing? Come on up. He goes, Tag, I don't know what to do here. He goes,
I know.
I don't know what to do. He said, what do you mean? He goes, I don't know what to do. He said, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. He goes, you come up to this porch, you give me a hug, and you tell me you love me.
Okay.
And he did.
You're going to make me cry.
He did. And they did. And it was so when I say a beautiful death, he talked
I know what you mean.
And connected with everybody. And then also he came back to Tags the week before we closed. He was able to be there Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday night. And it was a packed house. Because at that point, the newspaper already picked up that Tags was closing, that my dad had an illness. and we were running out of sauce.
Oh,
we
I'm
couldn't,
sure.
we couldn't make enough food
I'm
for
sure.
the people that were coming in. In fact, the last day that we were open, it was a Saturday. My dad was there earlier that morning and it collapsed, and we had to take him home. And I got home to change and just check in on him. And that was the last time we ever spoke, because later that night he slipped into a coma. But that was the last night of tags. And oh my God, it was just, we had to order pizza. But Friday night, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, when he was able to be there, people were just giving him standing ovations. People were coming out hugging him because the whole community came to be there for his finale.
Oh.
So when I say a beautiful death, you could not have scripted anything more beautiful in terms of a passing.
To feel all that love given back to you.
And be able to, communicate that. And I remember Tuesday night, his last week, we had dinner. He specified exactly what he wanted, which was not Italian food, ironically. He had this whole thing planned out of what he wanted. Baked beans, pasta salad. God, I have to ask my mom what else.
Well,
it was random food.
Some of those older Italians, my dad's like this too. We call them farmioles.
Yeah.
I'm like, you like this farmer food. They do. They love it.
I don't know, but that's what he wanted,
Okay.
For his last family dinner, one of his last family dinners. And so that was Tuesday night. And then he went out and played cards with some friends, and he came home. And we had a tradition where we'd stay up at night, because usually I was driving back from D.C. and I was a night owl and he was a night owl because he'd just get off work. And, we'd stay up, talk half the night or watch, Sopranos, binge watch. And anyways, that night he came back. It was about 9:30, 10ish. He wasn't out very late. He obviously, wasn't feeling good. And he said, let's have our talk. Let's have one of our talks. He said, come over on the couch. And I sat over next to him and he said, are you okay with me dying?
Oh my gosh.
And I said, I'm okay with you dying. I'm not okay with not being able to talk to you anymore. And he said, I know. He said, don't worry, kid. We're going to find a way to do that.
Oh.
He said, I'll make that happen. And he has. It's like I feel him all the time. Holy shit.
Oh my
I
goodness.
feel a connection with him, even though he's passed. I still feel very connected with him. And I do. I talk to him all the time. Dad, what do you think about this? I don't know about that. I don't know. What do you think? It's
and
like, and I wait for a sign or something,
So for all of the non-Italian people that are listening.
Right. Yeah.
We are typically very spiritually.
Very.
And I don't know about your family, but I even have some of the dark energy. There was some of that. My grandfather's sister was a real Italian witch.
Did she have the superstition with the eye twitch and stuff like that?
It wasn't a superstition. She
so
did curse and black magic. Yeah, black magic.
Oh my God.
Not good stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So we don't even want to talk about that.
So you said Sicilian.
Well, Sicilian. I'm half Sicilian. Yeah.
Got it.
So, but just to educate all of the non-Italian people. So I don't know if your family used this term, but we used to call people that were not Italian medigans.
I've heard that a lot. Yeah.
So do you know the origin of it?
No.
Okay. So the Italians came to America. They could not say American.
Right.
And if they made an American friend and they would go to their house and they would not offer them something to drink or eat or overtalk them, talk loud, lavish them with physical touch that was, not wanted, like hugs and stuff. I meant hugs and stuff.
Sure, yeah.
They'd say, oh, these Americans, but they couldn't say American. They couldn't Medigan.
Medigan.
So, I always say, well, for all the Medigans that don't understand, we are, a different kind of breed for sure.
Yes.
But honestly, Leah, to hear the love, I want everybody listening to understand about karma. Because you do not want to do black magic like my great aunt, because that will come back in a negative way. But you do want to put out all that love into the community like your dad did.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful sentiment, like you said.
Yeah. And
they all surrounded him in the end.
We all surrounded him. He passed away at home. We had hospice come in. We all said our piece, our goodbyes. I'll share one last poignant story. So I was a musician growing up, and I played the piano. My great grandmother, who was from Italy, used to always make me play Come Back Sorrento and all the Italian songs. What I learned for her, specifically to play for her. But anyways, when I was 16, I started breaking out away from traditional music or whatever it was that I was playing and started composing music. And there was a couple.
Of course you did.
Couple songs that my dad really liked, but one while I was in the process of writing the book, this is an interesting kind of throwback. So when I was in the process of researching and writing the book, I had this song that came to me, I could hear in my head, and I went out and bought a digital piano because I couldn't obviously move a physical piano in my apartment. So I bought a digital piano and I mapped out this song, and it was a ballad. And at the time, the visual I had in my head was the Vietnam veteran who was going to visit his old friends that were at the memorial on the Vietnam Wall. And I played it when I came home. My dad never had a chance to read my book. I was still in the process of writing it when he passed away. But I came home and I said, Dad, this is the song. This is a new song. I want to, play it for you. I moved back home and I had my digital piano with me. So I had that up in my room. My room was directly above his bedroom, which is where, we had kept him comfortable, where he was passing away. And when hospice said, would you like to have the final moments with him, to my mom, she said yes. And so we all kind of honored that request. And I think my brother and my sister went out to the living room, and I went upstairs and I wanted to play my song for him. So I was upstairs and I turned it up as loud as I could and I played the song for him. And when I got done playing, my sister came up the stairs crying. He's gone. And I already knew. I could feel when he went. And I said, I know. She goes, how'd you know? I said, I know. And I went down, and my mom said the most beautiful thing happened. He heard this music, and he turned his head to where it was coming from, and that's when he took his last breath. I said, Mom, that was me. That was the song I was playing for him.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
When you said beautiful passing, you weren't kidding.
He had a beautiful death.
Wow. Oh.
Yeah. I hope I have a beautiful death.
I do too. I hope I go with somebody playing me a ballad and the community and my loved ones coming.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. So we're going to lighten it a little bit.
Good.
And I want to ask you where the family sauce recipe came from.
So that
originally.
Yep. So that came from my grandmother's side of the family. So they're from a small town outside of Naples called Cervettinara, which actually I would say about 75% of the Italian families in Williamsport are from that area.
Yeah.
Back then, it was like hey, everybody, it's nice over here. Come over. Nowadays, that's called chain migration. It's just a joke. But anyways. But no, my great-grandfather came first and was sending money back home, and my great-grandmother came, and as I share with you, she was pregnant with my grandmother. But there are a lot of the Italian families in that village that, were all either cousins or related or friends, and they started coming over and talking about how nice Williamsport was because it reminded them of Italy, the rolling hills, and just like they really loved this area. New York
was beautiful.
It was, and New York was a ghetto and was difficult and was rough.
The early 1900s, that was right when we were lumber capital of the world as well.
I think we were.
Wasn't it around then?
We were more in the 1850s through 1880s was like the height of it, but we still were riding that wave through that time frame.
And there were a lot of millionaires that lived here that made their money off of that lumber industry.
Yeah.
Just a little side note.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So are we going back?
We're on, yes.
Okay. So my great-grandparents opened up a restaurant called the Columbia.
Oh,
so
yes. I didn't realize that your great-grandparents started that.
Yeah. So they had the Columbia. And so the recipes were my great-grandmother's, the Mercaldo family, which is also why if you would go to Mercaldo's restaurant, there was a lot of similarity between the sauces and the foods and stuff like that. So between the Mercaldos, the Taddios, and the Tagliaferris, it was all the same or similar recipe.
Yes.
Different, families had little different tweak here or there, but mostly 95 to 98% the same.
Oh my gosh.
So that's how they made their way in America and, put their kids, through school and whatever. And then later, my great uncle Leo and his wife, my Aunt Vicky, took over the Columbia, and that was the new Columbia that was down on 3rd Street.
That. Mm-hmm.
Next to Van Campen. So that's that. I mean, that recipe though came over from Italy. That was my great grandmother's recipe.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you get all of your Italianness from your dad's side, is your mom?
She's half Italian.
Okay.
So her father's family came from Calabria, And then her mother is German. She's Pennsylvania Dutch. Although she had a fascinating story too. In the 1920s, her father was a bootlegger.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he bootlegged gin in Staten Island area. Well, he got arrested. Apparently, they lived a life of opulence. She remembers like her petticoats and this like almost she called it like a castle that they lived in.
Oh my gosh.
Somewhere out in Long Island area. And then when the feds came and raided or arrested him, they were homeless. They allowed the family to stay in the yard until she could figure out where to take them. So she said she had her petticoat dress and her fancy baby doll in a tent on their lawn. And it was not a happy, at some point her father came home from prison and he was not a nice man apparently, was very mean. She left as soon as she could. And then later in World War II, she worked for Piper, airport or airplane plant. And then my grandfather had come home from the war at some point. They met. How she described it was she thought he was handsome. So one day she walked up and gave him a kiss on the cheek. And after that, they got married.
Okay.
Yes. So anyway, she was a fascinating woman too, but she's the only non-Italian, grandparent that I have. Mm-hmm.
I love I just love knowing a family history and the heritage. And I think it's so important. I wish people would talk about it more to like the grandkids and everybody coming up. So who taught you how to cook? Or was it just something that came to you?
No, I mean, since I was a kid, we all would go and help after kindergarten roll out gnocchi. So,
please. Yes. I have nightmares about gnocchi.
Oh, yeah.
And I say gnocchi as well, and I have other Italians correcting me. It's gnocchi.
Whatever.
It's gnocchi. I'm like, okay, well, in Williamsport, it somehow ended up gnocchi. I don't know. But every Sunday to roll those damn things, I have nightmares about that. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I could do it with two hands. I mean, we could do this while we were talking.
I know.
You and I could have this interview right now, rolling
that would
gnocchi.
Have been cute. We should have.
We would not even have to look down to see what we're doing. Is what that is, right? You're just making gnocchi.
Oh.
Yeah, rolling gnocchi.
So you started out with the gnocchi.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I would get bored of that and go make rigatoni string necklaces and draw on them and give them to everybody. And but yeah, no, we started with the gnocchi.
Did your grandparents make their own pasta? Because I have memories of my one grandmother.
Yeah.
She would put, now that I think about it, was kind of, hope she washed the sheets, but she would have sheets over the couches.
Yes.
And put the noodles on the.
Well, because we had the restaurant, we just put the sheets over the tables and laid it out.
You did it a sanitary way.
Yeah.
Okay.
we kind of had to. I mean, we had codes and stuff like that. So, so we make our own pasta. We call them homemades. It's really fettuccine, but we also sell regular box spaghetti just because that's what people like as well. And then, oh God, this is why I'm not married, by the way. I will tell you why I am not married.
Because we're extra?
No.
Oh.
So I was in college, and one of my college roommates was this really sweet Italian girl from New Jersey who, by the way, called sauce gravy and made me want to punch everything about it.
Oh, please. We have to have a whole episode on is it sauce or gravy?
It is sauce.
Thank you.
It is
what
sauce.
You
put on
it is not
your turkey.
Thank you.
Okay.
It is not gravy.
I'm so glad that you and I are here.
Okay.
So anyways, she was always talking about her food and this and that, the other thing. And we had a bunch of guy friends that lived across the street, and they came up with the idea of why don't we have an Italian cook-off? You guys cook and we'll eat. We're like, okay.
And we'll eat.
Right.
Okay.
I know. So anyway, so we go to this store and I call my mom. I said, Mom, I need the sauce recipe. She goes, you're not getting the real sauce recipe. She goes, I'll give you the marinara sauce recipe, which is a vegetarian version.
You're her daughter. Why would she not?
Not only that, but listen to this. When I was a kid, she made fish sticks or grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup every single day because she didn't know how to cook. Finally, I was 4 or 5 years old. And my grandmother came over to the house one day. She said, Teresa, you need to be able to feed my kids and my son. She goes, come into the kitchen tomorrow. You're going to start learning how to cook. So they taught her everything she knows, right? But anyways, it was my mom or my grandmother, my Aunt Vicky, oh my God, Aunt Maggie, my Aunt Marianne. They taught her how to cook. But when she married my dad for the first 5 years, no, not a lick. And I still remember the fish sticks to this day. With Mr. Paul. The box? Yes. So anyways, all right, so now fast forward, 15 years, I'm in college, I'm in this cook-off, I have to learn the sauce. She says no. I'm like, oh my God. So, but she gave me the marinara recipe. And I said, and I want to make baked Italian chicken. She goes, I can't tell you that. I said, Mom.
Oh my gosh.
She said, if you write it down, as soon as you're done making it, you need to rip it up or burn it or put it down the toilet. I'm telling you, like, this is like next level.
The Metagons listening do not understand.
So I said, fine, I will do it. And she kept calling me, are you done yet? Did you? I was like, I'm not done yet. So finally, I was like, okay, I'm done. She goes, rip it up. And then I want you to do it. And I was like, okay, fine. So anyway, and then our friends come over and it's good. She calls me. She goes, how was it? I said, it was good. She goes, but was it great? I said, what did you not tell me? She goes, well, I couldn't tell you everything.
I knew she left something out. They do that all the time.
And I said, don't you know a way to a man's heart is through his stomach? If I'm not married, it's going to be because of you. So I am not married. It is because of her. I do know all the recipes now, though.
Well, for people listening, do you guys remember Everybody Loves Raymond?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Marie didn't do it to her own child. She did it to the daughter-in-law, which is more acceptable because the daughter-in-law was a Metagon. But do you remember she put a label over the one spice when she asked her for the sauce recipe, so she made it wrong? I mean, they are like diehards with their freaking recipes.
Yes.
It is ridiculous.
Oh my God. One of my best friends in DC married, oh my God, he's such a great guy. He's a Marine. I think he's a colonel now. Wow. But anyways, I know. He's Italian. Actually, he's from Sicily. And so same thing. We were always talking about food. He's like, let's just play around and have some, it was kind of a theme off of the cook-off.
Another cook-off. Yeah.
So anyways, but we decided to make meatballs. He wanted to do his meatball recipe. I did mine. I forget what else we did. So same thing. We go to the store and they were coming over to the house that I lived in. And oh my God, our friends. And this was like, of course we have wine and we're having so much fun. I went to the store though and I bought a thing of Prego. Or ragu.
Ugh.
And I because he said, do I need to get any of the spices? I said, no, I got a whole bunch of spices, help yourself to the spice rack. So anyways, I put a jar of ragu in the spice rack and I put a label on that said Carl's special recipe or Carl's special ingredient. I can't say what he said on this program because he opened that and he said, where's the garlic and all that? I said, over in this spice rack, over it. He opens it up, he turns over to me. You know what he said. But anyways, that was a lot of fun.
That's so funny and so typical.
Yeah.
I mean, we're evil, but we're evil in a fun way. Oh my gosh. Okay. So switching gears, we'll stay on the whole Italian food theme. Now you and your brother own Tag's Family Style Takeout. Mm-hmm. How did you come up with this idea? Because I will tell you that I do know when your restaurant closed, people were laying in the streets upset. Then I know because I got some baked, even though I, by the way, can make some good baked ziti myself.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Sometimes you don't have the time. So I had a couple of events and I'm like, screw this. I don't have time to add that to my plate. I'm calling Leah, made me awesome baked ziti.
Yeah.
Then that kind of, I think then I remember when your mom was doing it on Basin Street there for a while.
Yeah.
That flowed into, you were probably, this is my guess, you tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Right.
You were just so sick of people asking you for food. You're like, screw it, I'm opening up.
You're very spot on. So right after we closed the restaurant, a couple years later, my mom did have, she called it Tags with a Touch because there was a touch of other things that she was doing in that little shop too. And ultimately, though, she decided she wanted to move to Delaware. She was just really kind of trying to figure out where she felt happy again. It was hard for her to be in Williamsport after the passing of my dad. So she did that for a few years and then moved on from it. My brother, he actually picked up the business and was doing a restaurant. At the time, though, he was really struggling with addiction issues that we didn't know about at the time. So he wasn't able to be faithful to that endeavor in the way he wanted to be. And that knew he could be, because he was struggling. And a lot of his addiction issues stemmed from he never processed his grief and anger over our dad's passing. And so he completely shut down and he went down the path of drugs, unfortunately, that was really damaging, not only to him, but to, everything that he had ever worked for and ever done. And so I'm very proud of him. It's been 7 years this August that he's been clean and sober. But anyways, when my mom decided to move on, and then it was back in 2014 that I moved back home, and it was literally again just a pit stop. But then it turned out to be more than a pit stop. There was a lot of things going on with family that I wanted to help address and
Sure.
wanted to help get things back on track. And so, yes, people were like, oh, would you make me some sauce? Would you make me some meatballs? And I was doing it. And then it got to the point where we have one customer who literally buys 3 gallons of sauce at a time. And I'm always like, John, what do you do? Bathe in this? Like, is this a moisturizer? Like, what do you do with 3 gallons of sauce, right?
Well, we freeze it, Leah.
Yes,
of course.
he does. And he gives it out as gifts and whatever. So anyways, around that time, it was like, and I was making a little bit of business out of it. I was like, I have to do this in a more business, professional way.
Right.
So, got my license, got my insurance, worked out an arrangement with a friend of mine who had a catering company, but they had a facility. Actually, at the time, it was a food truck, and it later became a facility. But anyways, they never really had caterings on Mondays. So I thought to myself, well, I could do a Tags takeout on Mondays. And then
I remember that.
Yeah, right. So that's how it started.
Wow.
And then I would do private orders and pop in the truck and make whatever I needed to make for people. But anyways, it really took off, especially during the pandemic.
Oh, sure.
We just could not keep up with the orders. It was really difficult to be able to serve the number of people because people couldn't get food from anywhere else until the restaurants really started adjusting to doing takeout themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then they adopted the family takeout model. They were serving the family pans as well. But anyways, at that time, I knew we had grown to the point where we needed to find our own location just because we needed to get into the kitchen more and more and more. We had outgrown kind of the Monday night thing. So one day I was thinking about, where to go, what I was looking for. And I pulled into the old parking lot at Ralph's Meats because I didn't want to drive. It was raining out. I didn't want to be distracted. Again, it was one of those moments where I'm like, gee, Dad, why don't you show me, a good place? Or what do you think would be a good place? And that was a place we used to always get our meats and our candies walking home from school.
Remember. Yeah, me too.
And I looked up and there's a lease sign on it. So I called and I said,
my gosh,
what are you looking for? And then I don't know what possessed me because there was no for sale sign on it. I said, by the way, would you be interested in selling? And they said, well, I doubt it. The family's had us for a while. They get asked all the time. But it just so happens that the husband, that co-owns the place, has been having some health issues. So maybe the wife would want to be open to selling. And it turns out they were.
Wow.
And it was just one of those things where right at that moment, it just came
everything
together.
Lined up.
And they said, here's
God.
our price.
That's God.
We are not going to accept a penny less. It was a great price. We're not going to accept a penny less. And I was like, okay. And made it work. And we got the building and,
it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it in there.
And I was going for that old world Italian deli, New York style Italian deli, like that charm, you know what I mean? That you feel like when people are there. And so that's what I was going for with it. And we worked with Woodlands Bank for the loan on that. And they were great to work with. And it just all happened. It just all came together.
Definitely your dad.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Came together.
I love it. Well, if you live local, it's on Market Street.
Yes, 1116.
Okay. Yep. And I will post your Facebook page. And do you have a website or just Facebook?
We have tagstakeout.com.
Okay, we'll post that under the video.
I designed it.
And now let's just tie this up with a little nice, neat bow. And this is funny that I had this question written down, considering we just said that nobody gives away their secrets. Yeah. I was going to ask you, what's one secret that you could share with us to making your Italian dish perfect?
I'm going to tie this back to a story about my dad and his passion.
Okay.
We're going to come full circle. When my mom and I were down at Johns Hopkins getting my dad, we had stopped out to get a pizza or something. And when we came back, my dad was in his bed and he said, girls, come over. We need to have a talk. And he goes, girls, let me tell you something. If either of you ever want to get married again, lay off the garlic.
Oh!
So that's my secret, garlic.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Yeah. And when you're dating, little side tip, ladies, do not do the garlic bread at Franco's if you're dating.
Don't do garlic bread unless you're with another guy that really appreciates garlic and or Italian food Italian women, right?
Yeah, I always just say, well, I'll eat it if you eat it. That way we'll cancel each other out.
Right. Right. Otherwise, you're out there slaying vampires, right?
I will say this that a lot of people don't know. It is not the ingredients, it is the quality of the ingredients.
Oh my gosh,
because
yes.
when I get my dad's fresh garden tomatoes every year,
Yes.
and I make the platter with the fresh basil, and then I drizzle a little balsamic.
Yes.
Okay, I've had friends
love
try to
that.
recreate it, and they're like, it just doesn't taste the same. Because the key is, I order this special balsamic.
Yes.
It's almost like it's like a thick, sweet.
Yeah.
And I've tried buying balsamic in the grocery store, and it's so thin and gross
Yes.
and nasty.
Yes.
So even when you go places locally and you try to like reverse engineer, and you're like, why doesn't this taste the same?
Right.
I guarantee they're getting their ingredients from somewhere in New York City, and they're not going to tell you. You know?
We're lucky because Jack's Produce carries really high quality ingredients that my grandparents used to use. So
where's Jack's Produce?
They're over in South Williamsport on Charles Street.
Okay.
Or they'll carry, like, we'll say this is what we need, or this is the brand,
and they'll get it,
and they are great about carrying it or stocking it up for us.
Yes.
In fact, that's one of the keys. Because there was, I won't name names, but there was somebody that was trying to replicate our recipes and more or less saying that they were our recipes. And
oh my gosh!
For a while, they didn't taste anything like it, and I think it was because of the ingredients.
It is the quality. Mm-hmm. It is the quality. Even herbs. I mean, we're stuck here buying stupid herbs in a bottle unless you grow your own herbs.
Yeah.
But you go. I've never been to Italy, unfortunately, but I've heard that when you go there and eat the same dish, it's so different because it's all fresh.
Well, and it's fresh, and the olive oil. Oh, speaking of which, I am going to plug this. We import olive oil from Italy. In fact, we just found out that the family, the Orapollos, and it's called Orapollo olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, they literally live 10 miles down the road from where our great-grandparents grew up. They are 10 miles away from Civitanara. When I told them, they came to visit the last time, and I usually meet them in New York or the Pennsylvania border to go pick up our order. Anyways, they were like, well, we're going to be visiting Pennsylvania. We'll just come, Philadelphia area. We'll come see you. I was like, it's not close. They're like, no, we want to come see you, visit your shop and meet you in person.
That was so nice.
It was amazing. So anyways, they were looking at the old family photos, and I was telling them where our families are from. They crap themselves. Mr. Orapollo, I mean, he's very Italian, speaks a little bit of English. But anyways, I said, a lot of the families are from here. And I started going through a list, and I must have mentioned Girardi's. He goes, oh my God, here he went to high school with a Girardi over, in Civitanara area. So anyways, their olive oil, I've not had anything like it since the last time I was in Italy.
Wow.
You can't get anything like that, even if it's extra virgin or organic. Even if you get that at the store, it's not even close to. And you can tell when you pour it out of the bottle, it still has green. It's still a green.
Hence the olive oil.
Yes, right. Yeah, I know. Thank you. But anyways, it is exceptionally good. And
you know what? That's the only place I'm going to come in. That's the only place I'm going to get it from now on. Because it is the quality of the ingredients. You heard it here first, people. All right. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank
you. Since you're a writer, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but later on, you'll have to help me figure out. I need a line to close my podcast with every time. Okay. So, and it can't be "Don't be a Metagon," although that's probably what I'd like to say.
So, okay. Well, tell me, what was your inspiration for Underwire?
So, lifting women up one story at a time, inspire, educate. And of course I hope men listen too, but just to be a bright light because there's so much negativity anymore and just to tell fun stories like this. Anyway, you get back to me. I need a line to close out.
I'm gonna think
so right now I'm just going to be like, thank you. And then I always say, peace out.